The wind howled outside as Nathaniel Lane sat alone in his dimly lit study, surrounded by shadows that seemed to twist and pulse as the candle flames flickered in the draft. He stared at the photograph of Clara, his beloved wife, who had been gone for 3 years. Her laughing face seemed to beam with warmth, a stark contrast to the cold emptiness enveloping him now. Each day without her felt longer, a gnawing sensation that something vital and irreplaceable had been ripped from his life. Now, sit back, relax, and let the story unfold. Welcome to Storyational, where every word comes alive. Maybe it's time, he murmured, breaking the silence that filled the room. The idea had been teased into his mind by the whispers of desperate loneliness, and now those whispers seemed to grow louder. He had heard about the cult, the one that dove into the borderline of science and the supernatural, promising to bridge the gap between life and death. Just a few minutes of chanting, they said, and you could conjure forth the spirit of a loved one. The thought gripped him, both grotesque and intoxicating. Haunted by visions of Clara, Nathaniel felt a compulsion he couldn't ignore. With trembling hands, he picked up the phone and called the number he had seen scrawled on the back of a flyer. Bring back what you've lost. That night, he met with the leader of the cult in a decaying church located on the outskirts of town. The woman, Alicia, draped in tattered garments that spilled onto the cracked floor, welcomed him with a knowing smile. You wish for her to return, she said, her eyes glinting with a strange light. But understand, the veil between worlds is thin. What you call your wife may not be what you expect. Nathaniel nodded, his heart pounding. The desire in his chest eclipsed every doubt. The ritual was held on a moonless night, the air thick with incense as Nathaniel and Alicia gathered in the center of the church, surrounded by a ring of candles. Alicia began to chant, her voice rising and falling like thunder, bouncing against the peeling walls. Nathaniel felt an electric pull around him, as if the fabric of reality was being stretched thin. As the chant reached a fever pitch, an uncanny chill swept through the room. Nathaniel felt his breath hitch. There she was, Clara, shimmering and ethereal, bound by the energies of the ritual. Her face was familiar yet strange, her translucent figure flickering as if viewed through water. Clara, he called, the name bursting forth from his lips, a release of 3 years of anguish. She smiled, but it was a crooked thing, devoid of the warmth he had cherished. Darling, she replied, her voice echoing in the hollow space. It was her voice, but layered with something faintly mocking, a cadence that raised the hair on his arms. What have they done to you? Nathaniel's heart raced as he reached out, but his fingers slipped through her. An impossible gap that felt like the chasm of death itself. Nothing, love. I'm home. Alicia stepped back, watching intently, as Nathaniel was engulfed by a tempest of emotions. He was overwhelmed by the familiar scent of Clara, by the ghost of her laughter that reverberated through his mind. Deep down, however, an unsettling fear whispered that this was only a masquerade. Days turned into weeks, and Clara seemed to settle into the house as if she had merely stepped out for a moment. She wore her old clothes, even cooking in the kitchen where the lingering smell of her favorite dishes brought back floods of bittersweet memories. But there were cracks in the fabric of their resurrected life. Late at night, the noises began. Scratching sounds and low murmurs that stirred Nathaniel from his sleep. Each time he darted out of bed, heart racing, Clara would reassure him. It's just the old house settling, dear. But a gnawing instinct told him otherwise. Flashes of her smile transformed into something sinister. He caught her staring at him through the windows at odd hours, her expression an unreadable mix of sorrow and something darker. Nathaniel often found her in the garden, standing quietly among the flowers with soil beneath her nails, whispering to the ghosts of the departed. Clara, what are you doing? He would ask, trying to pierce through the veil of her tranquility. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to give it a like and share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. If you want to hear more stories like this, make sure to subscribe to Storyational. There are always exciting and thrilling tales waiting for you here. Just tending to the earth, Nathaniel. We're all part of this cycle. Now, sit back, relax, and let the story unfold. Welcome to Storyational, where every word comes alive. On one dreadful night, the tension snapped. Nathaniel woke to find Clara gone, the house silent and oppressive. The shadows seemed to be holding their breath. Panic clawed at his throat as he stumbled outside, drawn by an inexplicable force to the garden. There, beneath a full moon, Clara stood surrounded by freshly churned soil. She bent over a shallow grave that glimmered in the night like a dark invitation. What are you doing? Nathaniel's voice trembled. She looked up, her expression a mix of longing and jubilation. I'm meeting them, Nathaniel. I'm bringing them back too. The truth hit him like a physical blow. What have you done? Her laughter echoed eerily, distorted and disembodied, as she raised her hand, revealing something dark and writhing. The cracked remains of a porcelain doll, once belonging to their deceased child, a twisted reflection of what they had lost. You didn't think I was alone, did you? We're just taking back what was always ours. And then he understood. The ritual hadn't merely brought Clara back. It had opened a door. The other spirits affected by Alicia's dark art were swirling in the ethereal gloom, angrier and hungrier than he had ever imagined. Clara, please, he begged, stepping back, horror flooding through him. Your heart called to them. Your grief brought them to us. Her eyes sparkled with a wicked glint, and he knew then that he was losing her again, and the risk of losing everything he held dear was now imminent. The wind howled, swallowing his cries, as the shadows coalesced into shapes, ghastly specters emerging to lay claim to their severed connections. Clara took a step closer, her face floating between a spectral glow and decaying reality. Remember, Nathaniel, you can never let go. You called me back. You chosen this pain. And in that moment, Nathaniel grasped the chilling truth, that love could be a chain around the soul, dragging both the living and the dead into an abyss. One where disturbing truths twist into madness and the thread of death weaves through every emotional bond. As darkness consumed him and faces from his past reached out, he understood the terrible price of his desperation. Some spirits should remain buried. When dawn crept into the sky, illuminating the garden, it revealed a fresh mound of dirt, but Nathaniel's cries would never find a voice. Clara had returned, and yet he was lost forever in the horror of his own creation. In the days that followed, no one would speak of Nathaniel Lane. Just a man who once loved, now a specter caught between the worlds, eternally yearning for a peace that would never return. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to give it a like and share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. If you want to hear more stories like this, make sure to subscribe to Storyational. There are always exciting and thrilling tales waiting for you here. Years passed in the town, and Nathaniel's name faded into whispers, mere echoes among unsanctified stories shared by flickering fires on cold nights. The house where he once lived stood abandoned, lurking at the end of a winding path overgrown with wild vines and thick roots. Neighbors spoke of strange sightings, figures watching from the windows, fleeting shadows racing through the garden. Children dared each other to approach the property, spurred on by tales of a man lost to darkness, trapped by his own longing. But behind those closed doors, Nathaniel wandered, suspended in the limbo of his own making. He could still see Clara in fleeting moments. She would flicker in and out of focus, her laughter echoing in the halls. Yet beneath that laughter lay a chilling undertone, like the soft rustle of restless spirits caught in her wake. Sometimes she would beckon to him, her fingers trailing hints of warmth through the cold air. Come to me, Nathaniel. This world can feel so lonely, can't it? Each time, Nathaniel felt the pulse of emotion within him, pulling him closer to that narrow bridge between grief and obsession. Sometimes she brought with her the remnants of their child. He would catch a glimpse of a tiny hand, pale and ghostly, reaching through the mist. He would scream, desperate to relinquish the weight of the past, but the echoes would fall silent, swallowed by the oppressive shadows that had grown just a little thicker in her presence. It wasn't long before he realized that Clara was no longer just a guardian of bittersweet recollections. She had become something far more malevolent. Nights were spent in torment as the rhythm of murmurs and whispers crescendoed into a cacophony each time he neared the garden. They were legions, chained to the earth, lost souls clamoring to reclaim their lives, fueled by his torment and Clara's insatiable hunger for companionship. One stormy evening, driven by a deep-seated need to confront what had emerged from the dark, Nathaniel descended into the garden. The tempest roared above him, wind tearing through the barren branches like the rattling breath of centenarian spirits. He clutched the porcelain doll he had unearthed from under the floorboards, once a cherished possession of their child, now a relic of heartache. Perhaps this final, desperate plea could sever the disturbing bond he and Clara shared. Enough! He yelled into the rain-laden gloom, his voice trembling with raw defiance. I loved you both enough to let you go. The response was silence, the kind that felt heavy and dense, pressing down upon him like the weight of eternity. Then, a rustling began. Ensconced in the shadows, and Clara emerged, glowing in the fleeting flashes of lightning. Her once beautiful features were now twisted, an enigmatic riddle that sent shivers clawing up his spine. "Nathaniel," she said, her voice soft yet edged with dissonance. "Why would you want to let us go? We're your family. We belong together." "Not like this," he cried, holding up the doll as if it were an offering. "We were supposed to love and cherish each other, not become this." But even as he spoke, he felt his voice wavering, caught in the maelstrom of memories that threatened to drown him. The longing for the warmth of Clara's embrace battled the dread coiling around his heart. Clara stepped closer, her eyes glinting with an unholy light. "You wanted me back. You wanted our child to be with you again. You opened the door, Nathaniel. And every moment you keep us apart, we wither. You cannot forsake us now." Suddenly, the air was alive with unseen movement. Shadows crept closer, swirling and darkening as a storm descended upon him. Not of nature, but of sorrowful specters drawn to the turmoil of their binds. Each wraith-like figure whispered his name, begging for recognition, coaxing him into the depths of despair. Nathaniel realized in his anguish that Clara had become a queen among these souls, ruler in a realm of pent-up grief, ready to unleash the void upon the living. "No!" Nathaniel shouted, the desperation clawing at his throat as he dug his heels into the soft earth. "You can't take me back. This isn't what we wanted." The shadows converged upon him, whipping through the air like a monstrous whirlwind. In that moment, he understood he needed to break the cycle or succumb to the fate he had unwittingly woven. With every ounce of willpower left in him, he hurled the porcelain doll toward Clara, its fragile body shattering at her feet. The moment it broke, time seemed to freeze, and the air erupted in chaos. A piercing scream burst from Clara's lips, reverberating in the tempest, an anguished wail that echoed through the fabric of reality itself. The shadows recoiled, a tide retreating as ripples of light washed over the garden in a blaze of purity. "No, you will not leave me," Clara shrieked, peeling away her ethereal form to reveal a haunting visage, eyes wild with fear and fury. "Let them go," he yelled, his heart pounding, the conviction of his love igniting a flame deep within. As the storm raged and the wind howled louder, he spoke the words he had long harbored. "I choose to let you rest. I choose to let the dead lie still." Each word dissolved the bonds of soul and sorrow, loosening the grip Clara had over him. Slowly, in that cascading moment where reality and fantasy blurred, he began to feel their connection unraveling. Her face twisted in horror as the shadows around her began to fray, losing their grip on the world. But the spirits, awakened by the tumult of agony, surged around him, desperate to retain their existence. "You cannot abandon us," they screamed, the sound like a chorus of the undying, reaching deep into the corners of Nathaniel's mind. "You are all we have." "No," he cried again, his voice thick with savage determination, and finally, the shadows recoiled, drawn back into the soil from where they had crawled, returning to the embrace of death. Clara's silhouette flickered, dwindling like the last embers of a long-forgotten flame. As the storm subsided, Clara's anguished visage was left suspended before him, her eyes shimmering like pools of darkness. "You think this is the end? You will never forget me. I will always be with you, Nathaniel." With that, she dissipated into a swirl of sparks and fog, the wind carrying her away like ashes on the breeze. Nathaniel stood alone in the garden, breathless and shaken. The cleansing light bathed him in its warmth as he hung onto the last vestiges of Clara's memory in his heart. For the first time in years, he felt an aching clarity. He turned to the abandoned house, the former prison of his grief, and took a step toward the dawn that broke at the horizon. Perhaps it was time to let go of the memories, of the pain, of the cycle that had drawn him deeper into the darkness. As he walked away, feeling the lightness push back against the enormity of despair, he knew that healing would take time, but freedom began with one step. Letting go of ghosts and embracing the living, whatever that might mean now. And as the tales faded into the whispers of the wind, the stories shifted. People began to speak of the house not as haunted, but as a refuge. Once a place of sorrow, now a symbol of liberation. No longer did Nathaniel Lane exist as a specter. He had chosen life. The lingering echoes of what had been slowly faded into nothingness, leaving behind the promise of dawn. As the sun rose, he embraced it, stepping boldly in the direction of a new beginning. Never again would he yearn for shadows. This was where he would find peace. And as the world moved on, the spirits remained behind, to rest finally, beneath the earth where they belonged, undisturbed, Free at last. As Nathaniel walked away from the weight of shadows, he felt a flicker of hope illuminate the corners of his heart that had been shrouded in darkness for so long. Each step was laden with the memories of Clara and their child. Yet a sense of clarity washed over him. He was stepping into a new chapter of existence, one where love didn't tether him to the past but rather inspired him to forge ahead. Days turned into weeks, and Nathaniel busied himself with slow but steady renovations of the house. He painted the walls, stripped away the remnants of decay, and breathed new life into the neglected rooms. He planted flowers in the garden, vibrant colors bursting forth like a celebration of rebirth. The echoes of sorrow that wrapped the home began to fade, replaced by the sweet songs of birds and the rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze. Yet, despite this newfound renewal, the silence felt heavy at times. Every so often, when twilight cloaked the world in its blue embrace, Nathaniel found himself haunted by fleeting memories. The sound of Clara's laughter would drift through his mind, as if floating on the very air he breathed. He could almost feel her fingers brushing against his skin, a soft caress that would send chills racing down his spine. Then came the strange occurrences, subtle, unsettling signs that reminded him of the dark threads that once wove through their lives. The flickering lights in the rooms once illuminated in warmth, the whispers that carried on the wind just outside his windows, and the way the flowers in the garden would wilt overnight, only to bloom again with a vengeance, as if something unseen was drawing life from the earth. It all suggested that Clara was still near, but now she seemed different. No longer a vengeful queen among lost souls, but rather a specter tethered by love and rage, unsure of how to let go. Perhaps it was the unfinished business that lingered, the unresolved heartache of their child, the threads of grief that intertwined their lives. One hazy twilight, unable to shake the suffocating feelings of loss, he decided to return to the garden, the place that had once become a battleground between despair and liberation. As Nathaniel knelt among the vibrant blooms, he felt a tremor in the ground, a shiver that shook the roots of the plants beneath him. The air grew still, and a sense of foreboding washed over him, the hairs on the back of his neck prickling as the sun dipped below the horizon. That's when he saw her, a translucent figure standing amidst the flowers, her features aglow under the silver light of the moon. Clara appeared more ethereal than ever, her form flickering like a mirage caught between realms. She looked at him, her gaze piercing but filled with an unexpected tenderness. "Nathaniel," she whispered, her voice softer than a lullaby. "Why have you come back?" "Clara," he breathed, his throat tight with the weight of unspoken words and unfinished emotions. "I didn't want to leave you behind. I thought letting you go was the only way to break the cycle, but I still feel incomplete." She glided closer, her presence bringing a jolt of nostalgia that felt both comforting and chilling. "We had a family, remember? There was so much love between us, and then we lost it all. You stepped into the light, leaving me behind in the dark." "No," he argued, feeling a sense of urgency. I had to. I had to free you from this tether. It was suffocating both of us. The darkness was taking hold. But I am overshadowed by it," she admitted, her form flickering as though the very shadows were pulling at her essence. "I was never supposed to live as a ghost. I wanted to guide you, to protect you, as a wife, as a mother. But now I fear I have become something that haunts you." Tears brimmed in Nathaniel's eyes, the agony of helplessness clenching his chest. "Clara, what can I do? How can we find peace?" "There is one last thing," she said, her voice low and resolute. "We must honor what we have lost. Our child. Their spirit wanders, unmoored. If we can release them properly, perhaps I too will be freed." Nathaniel's heart sank at the mention of their child, a heartbreaking void he had tried to shield himself from. "But how?" "I need you to find the keeper of the graves, the one who can help us. There are words that must be spoken, tasks that must be completed to honor their presence. Only then can we break the cycle of grief and let our souls be free." A shiver went down his spine. Though it felt dangerous to pursue the very magic he had once escaped from, something deep within called him to action, the desire to heal what could no longer be undone. "I'll do it," he said, his voice trembling but resolute. "For you, for us, for our child." As Clara smiled, her form began to fade. "You must act fast. There is not much time. Find me in the place where the earth remembers, at the edge of sorrow, and speak my name. I will be waiting." With that, the shadows surged around her, pulling her away into the ether. Nathaniel spent the following days preparing himself for what lay ahead. He sought out the keeper, old and wise, residing in a dilapidated structure off the beaten path. A place thick with the scents of herbs and oils, a sanctuary for the lost. As he approached, he felt the weight of anticipation grip him tightly. Old stones lined the path, each carrying the whispers of countless souls. The keeper was ancient, eyes glimmering with secrets of time, and as Nathaniel explained his plight, he felt the truth resonate in every corner of the dim room. The dead are not to be trifled with, the keeper cautioned, her voice like the rustle of leaves. To summon what is lost is to bend reality itself. Are you prepared to bear the burden of their anguish? With steady resolve, Nathaniel nodded. I have to honor their memory. Clara deserves it. Our child deserves it. The keeper regarded him for a long moment, weighing the sincerity of his heart, before nodding and leading him through an intricate series of rituals, all under the watchful gaze of flickering candles that cast dancing shadows upon the walls. As twilight fell, Nathaniel found himself in a sacred space, the remnants of a forgotten burial ground, where the earth itself seemed to cling to the memories of those lost. He knelt by a simple stone, worn and aged, recognizing it as the final resting place of their child. In that moment, Nathaniel felt it, the presence of grief and love entwined. I'm here, he whispered, his voice trembling. I'm so sorry for what you went through. We didn't forget you. I promise to honor your spirit. He reached for Clara's talismanic bracelet, the one he had kept hidden since her departure. It shimmered softly, a guardian of love and pain. Holding it aloft, he spoke her name. Clara. The air shivered. The ground hummed with an intensity that nearly overwhelmed his senses, and shadows began to dance around him, weaving in and out of the darkened landscape. Clara's figure materialized, ethereal and glowing, rising from the depths of sorrow toward him. Help me gather them, she beckoned, her voice mingling with the whispers of forgotten voices. Honor them as they deserved. In that haunting moment, Nathaniel felt the spirits encircle him, joyful, sorrowful, restless. His heart thundered within his chest as he began to speak words he had not known he possessed, a chorus of remembrance, healing, and solemn resolve. My beloved child, he intoned, feeling the ancient energy course through him. Your spirit was never lost. You were never forgotten. Come to rest. Your family honors you now. The wind rippled as the energy in the air thickened, echoing with a pulse that resonated through the cemetery, binding them once more. Questions darkened the edges of his mind, but he pressed on, breathless yet driven. Clara stood beside him, the ghost of her former self now a radiant embodiment of love. Together, Nathaniel, she urged, her voice unwavering, find peace. As they spoke the names, the earth began to tremble beneath them, a visceral reminder of all the lives intertwined in this web of grief. One by one, the shadows surrounding them shimmered brightly, then began to lift, rising into the night sky like fireflies released from the grip of darkness. For moments that stretched into eternity, Nathaniel and Clara reached deeper, drawing forth every remnant of their family and the lost. As the wisps of spirit coalesced above, the air filled with a radiant light, illuminating the graveyard with warmth and love. And then, finally, the release came. Nathaniel felt it, the surge of energy that rippled through him, like the breaking of dawn after an interminable night. It was exquisite, excruciating, a mixture of everything they had lost pouring back into the universe. With one final cry of love, the darkness gave way to the direct light, enveloping them all. The spirits entwined, including the faint outline of their child, filled with joy as they transcended into the unknown, bound no more by pain or sorrow. Thank you, Clara whispered, her form shimmering as she began to dissolve into radiant light. You freed us. Thank you for remembering, and for letting me go. As she faded, the moon hung high above, illuminating the graveyard that now felt imbued with a tranquil energy. The shadows ebbed and flowed like whispers slipping away on a soft breeze. Nathaniel knelt in silence, his heart full yet bittersweet. He had released the chains of sorrow that bound him to the past, honoring not only his wife and child but the steps toward a future he could now invite into his heart. In the stillness that followed, he felt a gentle warmth, a caress like the softest embrace, a promise that love endures even beyond loss, and that freedom was forged in the depths of grief. And so, while all those lost had been laid to rest, Nathaniel walked away from the graveyard, ready to embrace life anew, prepared to share the love he had kept buried beneath sorrow. The dawn awaited, innocent and bright, inviting him into its embrace, finally unshackled from the shadows. And over time, as the seasons changed and life resumed its rhythm, The house once more became a home, a sanctuary where laughter echoed through the halls again and where love lingered like a heartbeat, radiant and unfading. As Nathaniel walked away from the graveyard, he felt a sense of peace wash over him. He had released the chains of sorrow that bound him to the past, and he knew that Clara and their child were finally at peace. He thought back to the journey they had been on, from the darkness of their past to the light of their present. He remembered the moments of joy and laughter, the moments of sorrow and pain. But most of all, he remembered Clara. He remembered the way she smiled, the way she laughed, the way she loved. He remembered the way she made him feel, the way she saw him, the way she loved him as he walked. He realized that he had been given a second chance, a chance to live, to love, to laugh. He thought about the future, about the possibilities that lay ahead. He thought about all the things he had been wanting to do, all the places he had been wanting to see. And then, as he turned a corner, he saw her. A young woman with long, dark hair and bright, green eyes. She was smiling at him, and he felt a spark of recognition. "Nathaniel," she said, her voice hesitant. "Is that you?" He stared at her, unsure of what to say. He had expected to see Clara's face, but this was a stranger. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice shaking. "My name is Sophia," she said. "I've been watching you for a while now. I've seen the way you care for others, the way you love with all your heart. And I have to say, I'm intrigued." Nathaniel stared at her, unsure of what to say. He felt a flutter in his chest, a sense of excitement that he hadn't felt in a long time. "I'm listening," he said finally, his voice steady. Sophia smiled, and he felt his heart skip a beat. He knew, in that moment, that he was in trouble. He was in trouble because he was falling for her, hard. Nathaniel blinked at Sophia, her presence both startling and comforting. It had been so long since he had felt any spark of attraction or connection, yet here she stood, offering him a glimpse of something beautiful in the aftermath of his grief. He started, threading his fingers through his hair in disbelief. "I never expected to meet anyone like you." Sophia's smile widened, her green eyes sparkling with a light that felt warm and alive. "I believe that life has a way of surprising you, don't you? You've been through so much, and I admire your strength." He felt a rush of vulnerability surging through him, but also a thrilling sense of hope. Perhaps this was his chance to open his heart again, to allow himself to feel joy amidst the remnants of his past. For too long, he had dwelled in sorrow, limiting his existence to the shadows of what once was. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a golden glow over the landscape. Nathaniel found himself drawn to the idea of a new beginning. "It's been a while since I felt anything, not just for Clara but in general. I lost so much, a part of myself along with them." "I understand," Sophia said gently. "But remember, love doesn't erase what has come before. It builds upon it. It reshapes who we are and leads us toward who we can become." Her words resonated in Nathaniel's heart, reminding him of Clara's spirit, forever woven into the fabric of his being, not as a source of sorrow, but as a foundation for his new journey. He could carry that love forward, honoring the past while embracing the present. "I'd like to get to know you, Sophia," he said, feeling a smile creep onto his face. "I think I'm ready to take that step." Sophia's expression brightened. "I'd like that too. Let's take our time. There's no rush, only discovery." They walked together, talking and laughing, sharing stories against the backdrop of the twilight sky. Nathaniel felt lighter with every step, as if the weight of his grief was lifting, transforming into something more profound, an acceptance. As they reached a small cafe nestled on the corner, Nathaniel couldn't help but glance back at the path leading toward the graveyard he had just left. The spirits of Clara and their child lingered in his thoughts, but now they felt like gentle whispers of encouragement rather than chains of sorrow. He vowed to cherish their memories, to embrace the love that would never fade. He turned to Sophia, a newfound spark in his heart. "Whatever comes next, I'm ready for it. Let's see where this journey takes us." With a newfound sense of purpose, Nathaniel stepped forward into the brightness of the future awaiting him, grateful for the past that had shaped him but no longer bound by it. Together, with Sophia by his side, a new chapter of his life began, one filled with hope, laughter, and the promise of love blooming once again. As they sat down, surrounded by the laughter of others and the hum of life moving forward, Nathaniel's heart felt expansive. For the first time in a long while, he could see a path before him, a path illuminated by the light of those he had loved, guiding him home. And in that moment, he finally understood. Life, with all its complexities, is a beautiful tapestry woven from love, loss, and new beginnings. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Storyational for more spine-tingling stories that bring every word to life. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a tale.